You want to know how a single ugly moment in a high-end shoe store turned into a years-long battle for forgiveness and a second chance at family? Well, buckle up, because I never thought I'd see a grown woman force a 6-year-old to lick her shoes in public, and I never thought I'd end up learning that even after all the pain, forgiveness might be the hardest and most beautiful thing any of us can do. It started on a night so ordinary you wouldn't have blinked twice. Maison Luxe was this glittering, cold palace of a store, impeccable floors, that sharp, expensive scent of leather and cleaning supplies, employees tiptoeing around like their jobs depended on silence. But in the center stood Claudia, my stepmother, if you want to call her that, dressed to kill in red, staring at a pair of black high heels as if they were the keys to heaven. Me? I was just a kid in a wrinkled white dress, dangling my feet, watching the light bounce off the marble and trying to make sense of my place in that room. You know how it is. Nobody tells you where you're allowed to exist when you're 6 and lost. But when Claudia noticed the tiniest fingerprint on her precious shoe, well, that was it. She snapped, dragged me out, made me kneel on the cold tile, tossed a rag at me, demanded I clean it. But the smudge only grew, and before I knew it, she was whispering, so sweet and deadly. If I really wanted to learn a lesson, I had to use my tongue, in front of everyone. I'll never forget the way her voice cut through that space, or the look on those employees' faces, fear, disgust, shame that it wasn't them on the floor. I remember trying, just touching the shoe and gagging, tears stinging my face, begging her to stop, but all Claudia did was smirk. Good, she said. Maybe next time you'll remember your place. Maybe it would have ended there, just another hidden scar. Except fate decided to deliver a plot twist right out of a movie. My father, William, walking in at that exact moment, still wearing his airport suit, briefcase in hand. The whole store froze. He saw me on my knees, my face red, lips split, and the look he gave Claudia. That was the day something inside him snapped for good. He scooped me up, wrapped his jacket around me, his voice shaking with anger and heartbreak. And for once, he saw through every excuse, demanded the security footage, told Claudia she had no right to speak my name ever again, and carried me out of that store while the world watched through the windows. After that, things got messy. The story hit the news. Mogul's wife forces stepchild to clean shoes, and suddenly our lives were under a microscope. William fired Claudia on the spot, froze her assets, called for an investigation. She tried to fight back, of course, threw every excuse in the book, went to the press, tried to twist it into a misunderstanding, but the footage didn't lie. The world saw her for what she was. And the backlash was brutal. The fashion world turned on her, protesters camped outside her home, and eventually, she was charged with child mistreatment and vanished from our lives. But if you think justice brought peace, you don't know how deep hurt goes. I stopped speaking, started hiding in corners, flinched at every sound. My dad tried. God, he tried, brought in therapists, canceled meetings, sat by my bed every night whispering that nobody would hurt me again. But I didn't believe him, not really. Not after all those years he'd been gone, lost in work, calling me for 5 minutes a night and thinking that was enough. Let me back up a sec. Love isn't measured in minutes or money. I needed him to be there, to notice the little things, the food I liked, the noises that scared me, the teddy bear with a missing ear I couldn't sleep without. It took months for things to change, and it didn't happen because he bought me new shoes or took me on trips. It happened in the kitchen, burning pancakes, braiding my hair until it looked like a bird's nest, reading fairy tales in a hoarse voice until we both laughed at the wrong princess names. It happened when he gave up control and let me be scared, let me say no, let me see him fail and try again. There were setbacks. I'd panic at the sound of heels, or have nightmares so vivid he'd find me curled up in the closet, clutching that teddy bear like it was my whole world. But every time he stayed. He learned to listen, to wait, to just sit beside me and let me know he wasn't going anywhere. And then came the day that changed everything. I drew a picture, our house with all the shoes thrown out, lights streaming from the windows, and wrote underneath, no shoes, just light. He framed it, hung it in the living room, and told everyone it was the most important thing he owned. That's when I started to trust him again, started to believe home could mean safety, not just walls. Years passed, slow, hard years filled with therapy, small steps, burnt cookies, and soft slippers for everyone. Dad started a foundation for traumatized kids, poured his heart into helping families like ours, and even learned to braid hair the right way. I grew up, found my voice, and started helping other kids learn how to turn pain into art, fear into color. And then, like a plot twist I never saw coming, Claudia returned, not as a villain, but as a broken woman working as a janitor, quietly cleaning floors, hiding from the world that hated her. The day I saw her, struggling with a mop in our center's hallway, everything inside me went silent. She was so small, so gray, so full of regret. She fell to her knees, sobbing, saying sorry over and over. And instead of anger, I felt something else. I handed her my old paint cloth and told her it was her turn to scrub her past clean. That moment, when I forgave her, when she wept and thanked me, was the day I realized forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about freeing yourself. My dad watched from the doorway, tears streaming down his face, finally letting go of the hatred he'd carried for years. We put the old high-heel shoe in a glass box, painted it rainbow colors, and made it the centerpiece of our annual art show. People came from all over, saw the symbol, heard the story. My dad spoke about justice, not as punishment, but as the moment you stop letting pain define your future. Claudia stood in the back, mopping, her face finally at peace. And that's how a piece of footwear became a symbol of forgiveness, a story we tell every year. How a child, a father, and even a villain can all find a way back to the light if they just dare to try. So what do you think? Does true justice come from punishment or from forgiveness? Would you have forgiven Claudia or shut her out forever? Are you more moved by William, the dad who learned to stay, or by Emily, the little girl who found the strength to forgive? Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk about where you see yourself in this story and what it means to find light after the rain that you'd think after. That night, the shoe in the glass case, the applause, Claudia's tears, life would just settle down into something soft and simple. But you know what I mean? Life's not a movie that wraps everything up with a neat bow. Forgiveness isn't an ending. It's just a door you walk through, not sure what you'll find on the other side. In the months that followed, things changed for all of us, some ways I expected, some that still surprised me. The Emily Hartley Foundation became more than a safe place for hurt kids. It turned into this beating heart in the community, the one spot where people could bring their pain and not feel judged for it. Dad was always there, sleeves rolled up, helping with art projects, reading stories, brewing the worst coffee you ever tasted but refusing to let anyone else do it. He'd sit in on therapy groups, sometimes silent, sometimes sharing a story that made even the toughest teenagers tear up. Every time someone new joined, he'd point to the rainbow shoe in the glass case and tell the story, never skipping the hard parts, never painting himself as a hero. And I kept growing up. I finished high school, started teaching little art classes myself, watched kids walk in with shoulders hunched and heads down, then saw them, sometimes weeks, sometimes months later, draw their own house full of light, like I once did. That's how I knew healing isn't a straight line. Some days I'd hear the sound of heels in a movie or see someone scold their kid in a grocery store, and it would all come rushing back, that sick, cold feeling in my chest, that urge to disappear. But each time it got a little easier. Grace, the therapist who changed everything for us, used to say, "You don't erase scars, you just learn to live where they are." And now I know she was right. As for Claudia, well, her story didn't just vanish after that art show. She kept working at the center, always quiet, always in the background, sweeping, mopping, sometimes pausing to watch the kids through the glass doors. At first, some staff wanted her gone, said it wasn't safe or right, but Dad, he just shook his head and said, "Everyone deserves a place to start over." I didn't know if I believed him at first, but then, one rainy afternoon, I found Claudia sitting in the break room, staring at an old photograph, her, back when she was young and beautiful and cruel. She looked up at me and whispered, "I don't deserve this second chance." I told her none of us do. That's why it's called a gift. She started to change, slow and small, helping kids carry boxes, bringing in day-old pastries, even smiling sometimes. But she never asked for forgiveness again. Maybe she knew she'd already gotten all she could hope for. And that was enough. The world outside kept spinning, and not everyone was kind. Sometimes the media tried to dig up the old scandal, tried to say Dad's charity was just for show, or that our family was still broken. But the people who mattered knew the truth. Hearts don't heal in the spotlight. They heal in quiet rooms, over burnt pancakes and midnight stories, in the sound of a father learning to braid hair or a daughter learning to laugh again. One winter night, just after my 19th birthday, I sat at the kitchen table, the snow piling up against the window, the warmth of the house wrapping around me. Like a blanket, Dad came in, hair grayer now, eyes a little softer, carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the old clock tick, the cat snoring on the rug. Then he said, "You know, I used to think I had to fix everything, right every wrong, protect you from every hurt. Now I see that sometimes, all a parent can do is stay." I looked at him, that man who'd been both my absence and my anchor, and finally said, "You did stay. That's all I ever needed." A few months later, the center hosted its biggest event yet, an exhibit called Light After the Rain, with kids' art covering every wall, stories scribbled on scraps of paper, music drifting from the old, upright piano. I stood by the entrance, greeting families, feeling more proud than I could ever explain. Claudia was there too, her hands still rough, hair still streaked with gray, but her eyes held a kind of peace I'd never seen before. At the end of the night, as everyone was leaving, a little girl tugged on my sleeve and asked, "Is it true? Did you really forgive the woman who hurt you?" I knelt down, looked her right in the eye, and said, "Yeah, I did. Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved to feel free." The girl nodded, then hugged me so tight it almost knocked me over. When all the guests were gone, I walked through the empty halls, past the rainbow shoe in its glass case, past the drawings and the echoes of laughter. Dad caught up to me, put his hand on my shoulder, and just stood there. We didn't need words anymore. Sometimes healing is just standing in the quiet, knowing the worst is over, and the best, well, it's whatever you decide to build out of what's left. That's our story. Not perfect, not pain-free, but real. A father who learned that presence matters more than power, a daughter who found the courage to forgive, and even a villain who got the chance to start again. Not redeemed, maybe, but at least seen. Maybe that's all any of us can hope for. So now I'm asking you, after all of this, do you believe people can truly change? Have you ever had to forgive someone who didn't deserve it, or asked for forgiveness you weren't sure you'd earned? Let me know where you're listening from, and what part of this story struck a chord for you. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that telling your story, messy, honest, unfinished, just might be the first step toward healing, for you and someone you never expected.